Hi everyone, this is Veronica and today we are going to talk about a bill that has been recently passed in Lok Sabha, that is Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill. So for my video updates, you can follow me on Instagram and the PDF of this lecture will be uploaded on my Facebook profile and my Telegram channel. So guys, this is our channel StudyIQ. If you're preparing for any government exam, our pen drive and tablet courses are also available. For additional information, you can visit our website or you can call on the numbers given on the screen, right? So why it is in news? I told you that recently Lok Sabha has passed this bill, very important bill, which was under discussion from a long time and there was a lot of criticism, and even now the community doesn't seem so happy even after this bill is passed. So we'll discuss these all things in detail. What are the concerns? What are the highlights of the bill? So see, firstly, before talking about the provisions of the bill, let's see how the legislation has evolved over the period of time in this matter. So first is third gender. See, the first step towards third gender equally occurred in the country in 2009. when the Election Commission of India added other as a third option on official ballots. Okay, after that, a expert committee was set up in 2013. The government set up this committee to examine issues related to transgender persons. So the committee stated that the transgender persons faced issue of social stigma. They usually face these issues in our country of social stigma and discrimination, which actually affect their access to healthcare and even employment. All the things which are common to the other heterosexual people, they face discrimination, whether it is healthcare or it is employment, or you can say education and government documents and any kind of social service. So expert committee for that was set up. Next thing happened when Supreme Court gave them recognition. This happened in 2014. So the Supreme Court actually recognized transgender persons' right to self-identification as whether they feel they are male, they are female, or the third gender. So further, the court also directed the government to grant legal recognition to transgender persons, and also they told the government to address issues of social stigma and discrimination, because social stigma and discrimination are the biggest problems this gender is facing, and Supreme Court told the government to provide them social welfare schemes for them to design policies for this third gender. Next was framing legislation. So see, the first effort at framing legislation of transgender was made in 2014. So the Rights of Transgender Person Bill 2014 was introduced as private members bill in Rajya Sabha, where it was passed. But the bill was never debated in Lok Sabha. I am talking about the older times. Finally, the bill had many progressive clauses. So they talked about including creating of institutions like national and state commissions for transgenders, as well as transgender rights courts. But all these remedial measures were done away with when the government drafted the Rights of Transgender Persons Bill in 2015-16. So finally, the bill was introduced in 2016. So it was drafted in 2015 by the government, and in 2016 finally the bill was introduced in Lok Sabha, following which it was sent to 31-member Parliamentary Standing Committee. So now we'll talk about the highlights of the original bill. Like, what are the highlights now? These are already there in the bill, provisions of the bill. So firstly, if we talk about employment and self-perceived gender identity, then this bill creates a statutory obligation on public and private sectors. So whether they are the public sectors or the private sectors, they need to provide them with employment and recognize self-perceived gender identity. However, this one is little debated, that I will tell you why. Next, why it is debated? Because these people need a certificate of identity as a proof from doctors. So it also provides this transgender person must obtain certificate of identity as a proof of recognition of identity as a transgender person and to invoke rights under the bill. So see, he needs to they need to transgender people need to get a certificate from a committee, from a screening committee, and that screening committee consists of a medical officer, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, then a district welfare officer, a government official, and the person himself. And finally, there will be grievance redressal mechanism also under this bill, provision of the bill. It has also provisions to establish a national council for transgender. This is very important, and it makes the government responsible for preparing welfare schemes and programs, because making policy for this for the transgender people, which in present system does not exist in our country, we need to come up with many such schemes. So a separate people, the bureaucrats, will be assigned this duty that they should come up with the welfare schemes and programs which are transgender sensitive and non-stigmatizing and non-discriminatory. Then this bill holds that it is a crime to push transgender persons into begging or bonded or forced labor. So this is also debated, because in our country there's a lot of discrimination, social discrimination for transgender people. Usually what happens in any country, in that case, whether it is India or any other country, you can come up with lot of laws and you can give political rights, but moving to social rights, it takes lot of times. So if we are banning the organized begging, which is the only source of employment for the transgender people, in that case we are really putting them in problem. That is why it is highly criticized by the community. Now, the rights of transgender persons to live with their families without exclusion. So this bill is recognizing the rights of transgender people, that they should live with their families without exclusion, and the use of facilities of those households is non-discriminatory, in a non-discriminatory manner. And this is also debated. We will talk, because this comes as a concern of this bill. So these are the highlights of the bills. Now, before talking about the concerns for this bill, let's talk, because in the revised bill, like, the government has almost accepted 27 amendments before passing this bill. They have also redefined the definition of trans persons, that who are the trans persons. So now the amendments passed include a change in the previous definition. So what was the previous definition? It was transgender people are the people who are neither wholly female nor wholly male. So this definition was criticized a lot, because it is very insensitive, right? It is very hurting in its meaning. So finally they have come up with a new definition, and it means the people whose gender does not match the gender assigned to that person at birth. Because while birth, when doctor cannot decide what is the gender of the person, and when the person grow up, he decides his own gender, because deciding a gender is something beyond biology. Okay, it is a deep personal experience of a person. So this will include all the trans men, whether they are the trans women, then if they are the persons with intersex variation, that if they are intersex variation means if they are assigned a particular gender at one time, and when they grow up they can align themselves with other gender, whether it is a male, female, or a transgender. Then there are gender queers, so all the people of LGBTQ family, we together call them as a queer group. And the persons, queer group, are the people who do not align themselves with the present conventional genders, and the persons having socio-cultural identities, whether they are the Kinnar, Hijras, right? So these people come under the definition of trans persons, transgenders. So now we'll talk about the concerns of recent amendments. So there are a lot of concerns with the recent amendments. So firstly, we will talk regarding identification. What are the concerns? So basically, when it is defining a transgender as a person whose gender does not match with the gender assigned to that person at birth. So this thing has been cleared now and revised. So finally, it also includes trans man and trans woman, as I told you. But however, this bill envisions a district screening committee, as I told you, which will be invested the power to certify people as trans or not. So there is a lot of criticism over this point. A person who wishes to transition from one gender identity to another will be certified only after a gender assignment surgery. Okay, this is what is said in this bill, and this requirement goes against the principle of self-identification. So this is a paradox. At one place you are saying there is a right of self-identification, and at other point you are saying the doctors will determine. So this goes against the principle of self-identification as it was laid down by Supreme Court. So it also goes against the Nalsa judgment of Supreme Court that had specifically laid out that any insistence on surgery for declaring one's gender is totally immoral and illegal. Okay, so this is the first concern. Now the second concern is about employment. Let's see how. So this bill criminalizes begging, organized begging, and prescribes a jail term of 6 months to 2 years for anyone who compels or entices a transgender person to indulge in the act of begging, because now this provision can harm the community, because in the absence of employment, when there is so much discrimination in the social scenario of our country, the transgender persons engage in a begging as a mean of livelihood. So sometimes they don't have a option, so they have to indulge into this. So somewhere they feel the government is cutting out their employment. Next thing is reservation. Now this bill states that the state will ensure the rescue, protection and rehabilitation of transgender person. This is under this bill. However, why it is criticized? Because the community is itself criticizing it because it fails to grant backward class reservation to trans people in education and public employment, and also the recognition of civil rights in marriage, in divorce, in adoption among transgender persons have not been addressed. Okay, so even what is happening in our laws, we have our laws, whether it is a rape law or any law, any criminal law, in the terms we are only using man or woman. So finally, the terms transgender is not there. So how the law of India will apply in rescue and protection of transgender is still need to be defined. Now we'll talk about rehabilitation. See, the bill bars forcibly separation of transgender persons, including the transgender children, from their families, except the court orders. Okay, nobody can take up the child, because in the conventional system, what happens if there is a transgender kind of person born in a family, the community people, transgender community people come and separate the baby from their parents. But now court is saying they cannot do so except through the court orders. So they should either live with their natal family, that is their blood or adoptive relations, or they should be sent to rehabilitation centers. Now, however, this bill failed to note that it was within the family that many transgender persons faced harassment and abuse and often felt driven to flee their homes. Also, when a parent or an immediate family member is unable to take care of a transgender, they should be sent to rehabilitation center. That is what is said in the bill. So this is controlling the right to liberty of the people, and it is making them subject to care when they do not need or want to, right? So these are the concerns with the bill. These are the criticisms of the bill. Now we'll talk whether India is on the right path, track or not. So see, these legal developments relating to the rights of transgender people have actually led to the emergence of many stories that show greater inclusion. Obviously, we are going towards the greater inclusion by bringing in such legislations in our country, and we are accepting the transgender people in the society. Now, these recent legal developments will give transgender persons the space to build the life they desire for themselves, because at least it is better when there was no law, but now at least we are coming up with legislation accepting these people in the transgender people in the society, so that they can build their own space to work and they can fulfill their own desires. Now, this community will no longer need to hide their identity because of the social pressures and discrimination. Usually they used to hide their identity to be a part of the society, and it was very difficult for them to get education, to get jobs. But now everything is on the track. Our country is on the right track, and at least these are the steps to build an inclusive, accessible and diverse India and make the things accessible to these people which were earlier discriminated. Now, how we can talk about the conclusion even while writing an answer, how you can conclude this topic, because though the bill is passed in Lok Sabha, there are a lot of criticism itself coming from the community. So how you can conclude it in an exam? So you can say that Indian government has taken an iconic step towards ensuring an equal, unbiased and awakened society. So finally, this bill will ensure that transgender people enjoy a life of dignity and equality without any discrimination. And it also guarantees a basic human right, that is right to identify as a member of our community and as equals, right? We are giving them to identify as equals in the society that has been denied to them for so long. Then in the end you can say, however, it is a very small step towards the right direction, as it is well known that despite the existing of robust laws, ground level realities are different and they take time to change. As I already told you, we bring in a lot of political changes, but it takes a lot of time for these changes to penetrate deeply into the social structure of a society. So with government and civil society organizations, we have to work round the clock, and there is a hope that there will be a movement from strength to strength, and now it remains up to Indian society to take this vision from the government to finally into its implementation, that it should bear fruits. So this is about the bill and how you'll approach this question in this kind of topic in the exam by writing a positive conclusion. So if you have any queries, you can contact me, and for the PDF of the lecture, it will be uploaded on my Telegram channel. Thank you.